Today's webinar. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever it is that you're joining us from. I know we've got some people joining us from APAC, from Australia, New Zealand, but also over in the UK. So if you are joining us from the UK, very much appreciate you taking the time out of your morning to join us on this webinar. So we're here to dive into the results of our recent survey that was conducted with finance professionals all around Australia and the UK, which has uncovered the real challenges and priorities shaping finance teams in 2025. So from things like manual processes to reporting struggles, we're going to look to unpack these findings and share some practical strategies to help you and your teams work a little bit smarter. So the goal for today, hopefully you'll walk away with some clear, actionable insights to help you streamline your month-end processes, enhance your reporting, and help you get some more value from your existing tools that you're using. So whether you're looking to save time, boost accuracy, or leverage automation, we should have you covered. Okay, so just to introduce ourselves to start with, we've got a panel of superstars with us today. So my name is James. I'm the APAC lead for ApprovalMax. I've been in the ecosystem of Xero/QuickBook apps for the last 7 years or so. So really enjoy helping businesses and finance teams find solutions to their problems with the use of technology. A bit more about ApprovalMax. So ApprovalMax is a cloud-based tool that helps finance teams streamline AP approval processes, so helping you to save time and reduce the risk of potential fraud and mistakes. We've also got Harry from Joiin joining us as well. Harry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody, and thanks, James. Yeah, so I'm Harry. Nice to see some familiar names kind of in the attendees list. I've been with Joiin about 5 years now, so since really it's kind of very early days. I head up the customer success arm of Joiin, and for those of you that aren't familiar with Joiin, Joiin is a kind of one-stop shop for normally and primarily consolidated group reporting, but also manages single entity reporting and some other things within there as well.
Fantastic. And we've got Jack Thiel from Mayday joining us as well.
Cool. Thanks, James. Yeah, so my name's obviously Jack. I'm the APAC lead for Mayday, and I suppose I'm an accountant by trade. Have been in and around the industry for just over 10 years now, in a variety of different roles, from audit to advisory, small business accounting, all the way through to the software side of things, which I've been lucky to be a part of for the last 5 and a bit years, and just over 18 months of that has been at Mayday. If you don't know Mayday, we're basically an accounting automation platform designed for larger Xero businesses, primarily those that are multi-entity, but we are really focused on the whole raft of challenges that come with month end, so hopefully quite relevant to today's conversation, because we're going down that path now. We're beginning the journey into the month end journals, accruals, those kinds of things too. So yeah, it's getting interesting. It's cool.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know how much of a headache it is for multi-entity, especially when it comes to things like consolidations and inter-entities. So it's great to have you both joining us today.
Pleasure.
Let's jump into our first poll. So we've got a poll here. What's your biggest challenge right now when it comes to finance operations? So it'd be quite interesting to get the results of this, actually. We'll see if it mirrors the results of the survey as well. You've got a couple of options for you to choose. If you can select your biggest challenge right now. Jack, Harry, any guesses? What's going to be the top dog?
Going to be the
Manual
top one, isn't it?
processes.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Manual processes. Yeah,
That's a
yeah, for
guess.
sure. All right, we'll let this run for another few seconds, get everyone a chance to answer the poll. All right, I think that is a pretty good amount of time. Hopefully you've all had a chance to put down what is the biggest challenge right now for you when it comes to finance operations. Susie, I'm not sure if you're able to get the results of this. Okay, good guess. Good guess. There it is. So manual processes slowing things down, coming at the top at 56%. Limited visibility or real-time reporting, 33%. Underutilized or poorly integrated tools, internal controls and compliance risks. Okay, yep, very similar to the survey results. And look, hopefully we'll be able to cover a lot of these points and give you some insights into what other businesses are doing, what other finance teams are doing to help with all of these key points here. All right, so give you a bit more context. So this webinar has really been created off the back of a survey. The study is being conducted jointly by ApprovalMax, Joiin, and Mayday. So focused on uncovering the key priorities for finance teams in 2025. 166 in-house finance professionals across Australia and the UK, including CFOs, finance controllers, and finance managers. Diverse range of industries such as construction, not-for-profit, SaaS, and professional services. So actually quite a broad perspective on the challenges and opportunities that finance teams are facing. And interestingly, we've pulled out some of the key themes across these different industries, and a lot of them are quite similar despite different industries that we've got here. Okay, so the first theme that we've got, reducing manual work. Same thing with the survey, same thing with our poll, right? This is the number one issue that teams are facing. So 46% saying their month-end processes have too much manual work, 41% a mix of automation and spreadsheets, and 35% need about 6 to 10 days to close their books. I might throw this one to you first, Jack. Is this something that you're seeing with the conversations that you're having with finance teams as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Every day, at the end of the day, if they come to talk to someone like myself, it means that they're in the market for software, and generally they're in the market for software because they've got a pain point, manual process, something that has hit a tipping point. I think everyone understands that you don't need an app for every single manual process that you have. And so, we all start with a piece of work that we do manually or a spreadsheet that we've kind of spun up to do something small and quick and easy and painless. But eventually that process becomes bigger, more transactions go through it or whatever the case may be. And then it begins to become a bit of a bottleneck and a bit of a problem. And so yeah, absolutely. If they're coming and having a chat to someone like myself, it is because they're starting to investigate how they can do it a little bit more efficiently. I actually thought it was quite interesting. 46% say that their month-end process involves too much manual work, and then 41%, are using a mix of automation and spreadsheets, and it kind of aligns relatively well, the involvement of spreadsheets in the month-end process, along with the feeling that I'm doing a lot of manual work. So, I don't know what to take from that other than maybe, if you do have some big manual processes that are still very spreadsheet heavy, then it could be worth looking around if you haven't to see if there might be a solution that can help.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that kind of always comes back to and is always one of the discussion points on these webinars is zero marketplace, 1,500 apps, whatever's in there. There's going to be a tool if it's finance related that you need, or if it's actually, even if it's outside of finance and it's something you need to automate report writing or anything, there's going to be a tool there. Go do your research, speak to experts, speak to colleagues, and find something. So like there's another example that I always use on these webinars, and it's relevant to here because they're a joint customer of the three of us. South African guy comes into a finance function. It's heavily manual. Most things are going through spreadsheets, lots of different spreadsheets. He implements free tools, saves like hours and hours on reporting. So if we look from a joint point of view, he's saving 4 days at month end just from his reporting style. Then equally, he's implemented ApprovalMax and Mayday as well and made massive savings as well. So look for those tools, the best of breed.
Yeah,
And
100%.
I think just on that point, what used to not necessarily have a solution may now have one. I think that's always quite an interesting, especially because we're having this conversation at the upper end of the audience, probably. If we're talking about businesses that are running, potentially on Xero or QuickBooks, but have a finance team or have a CFO in place, it means that they're at they're in the top 25% of businesses running on those tools. And 5 years ago, there wasn't as many of those businesses. 10 years ago, there was even fewer. So as there's more and more people kind of pushing the limits of the small business accounting platforms, there's new opportunities for ecosystem partners to come on board. So if you looked 5 years ago and you couldn't solve your problem, so you
Mm.
stuck with the spreadsheet, now might be a time to revisit that. There's always new stuff coming out.
Even
Yeah,
if it was
100%.
6 months, even if it was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
6 months ago, actually, isn't it? It's
yeah, yeah.
moving that fast.
It goes so fast, yeah. And I think there's a time and a place for spreadsheets. Like it's never going to go
Absolutely.
away, right? There are always things that you're trying to do that can't be automated. No tool is, bespoke for every single thing you're trying to do. But being able to automate, 80% of that is key, and it frees up the time to, do some of the more higher value work that your team need to be doing to make things move.
I I did a little bit of looking into the raw data on this because I was curious. So 41% use a mix of automation and spreadsheets, which is obviously interesting. There's another question, I think related to that, that was, what percentage of your total month-end process is, yeah, I think this is the question. What was the total percentage of your month-end process that's on spreadsheets?
Hmm.
And 11% of people, so about one in 10, said that it was nearly everything. So basically their entire. So if you're that 1 in 10, definitely there's going to be some opportunities for you. And about 30% said more than 50% of month end is on spreadsheets. So once again, there's another 3 in 10 who probably there's a lot of low hanging fruit, I'd say, out there. But you're right. If you're only using spreadsheets for a little bit, then I think you're absolutely spot on, James, that it may just be that that's how you plug the gaps.
For sure.
Cool.
Awesome. Let's move on to our second point. All right. So improving financial reporting. This is the second key theme pulled out of the survey. So only 11% are very satisfied with their reporting. This is different from the point you were making earlier, isn't it, Jack? But it's the same number there.
Yeah, that is different. But yeah, I wonder if it's the same 11% or if it's different. But yeah, that's surprisingly low.
Surprisingly low. That's what I pulled out of this as well. So surprisingly low, satisfied with their reporting, and Excel remains the main tool for many. Harry, over to you. You speak with a lot of people who are doing reporting for consolidations. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this is other than that kind of manual time saving aspect, this is probably the one that we get coming to us as the pain point. There's when we say satisfied, it's often there's errors, there's things that people are concerned about, there's which obviously kind of leads to decision drag, slower decision making, actually fundamentally flawed decisions if you're not happy with your numbers and the underlying data beneath it. And that's where like a tool like any of ours or whatever app it might be in the ecosystem where it's got a rigid tool that's got processes in place that's not going to suddenly accidentally drop off an account line or do any of those things that you can accidentally do in a spreadsheet. Um, it's super powerful and gives you that, I guess, kind of confidence in decision making. Um, Again, if I go back to an example, like like really keen on examples here, right? Speaking to a customer recently or prospect, literally beginning of last week, I think it was, come to join because or shopping around in our market actually because they are regularly making mistakes in terms of lining up accounts of VLOOKUPs when they're putting it into their spreadsheet. And they're kind of fed up with that worry, that nag in the back of their mind that actually we've just gone to the board with a really important piece of work here, making recommendations, and then actually
Mm.
being found out later on that um, your numbers aren't correct is not a good look.
Yeah, 100%. It erodes trust, and I think for finance teams, that's not really something that you want to attach to yourself, right? That you're reporting on wrong numbers and then hence making decisions off the back of those numbers for the business, and it turns out to be potentially the wrong decision because the numbers are incorrect.
Yeah, especially if you're like scaling fast, like Jack was alluding to earlier. If you're scaling fast and previously your spreadsheet was great or whatever you had in place was great, but now suddenly you've got four new entities you've acquired with two new chart accounts and there's different languages, different time zones. You want something a bit more fail-safe.
And I think like so reporting is obviously not something we do at Mayday. I know you guys do it really well at Join, and there's a few other solutions in market that offer, different things for different businesses, I suppose, and depending on what their needs are. It does come across because we obviously work with a lot of multi-entity businesses for their intercompany transaction side of things, and generally speaking, when we speak to them, they're both looking at the intercompany transaction side, but also saying we also need a consolidation tool. It does sometimes feel like it feels just like this mountain that they're going to have to traverse. That consolidations is this, or financial reporting in general, and consolidations are these just massive projects. It's going to be months and months for us to figure out how we're going to get this all together and all sorted. I mean, I'm sure you've had some customers come across, Harry, that have had, big projects and there's been a lot of work for them, and others that, switch a tool on in, a matter of half an hour and get a consolidated view. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on, because I imagine if only 11% are satisfied, there's, a fair few there who have probably got it on their priority list to look at, but it might just be feeling like this is a mammoth project.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's exactly as you said. There's a massive variance within that. You get, and like you look at the way people talk about app partners, whatever. Some of them will say, "I was up and running in 5 minutes. I got real value straight away, and I knew from that moment I was going to continue because I could see what that trajectory was going on." For other more complex organizations or smaller organizations that have less time available to them, that might be a really long process. Like we see people that take kind of a year to go from previous reporting into Join, and not even necessarily because they're super complex or anything, but just because they're a slow moving organization or loads of due diligence to do, particularly in kind of certain industries. But yeah, like I said, low hanging fruit, dive in,
Yeah,
give it a
absolutely.
go.
Yeah, 100%. It's yeah, it's always good to give things a try, and if you're not trying new things, then you're going to be missing out.
Yeah. And I'm guessing the people that are watching this webinar, again, we've already spoke about like at the forefront, they're watching webinars like this. They're the
Mm,
kind of people that will be doing that. So it's really exciting, right?
absolutely. Let's jump to the next point, getting real-time financial views. So being able to see the numbers in real time, 95% say that is important. 75% are not confident that they can produce accurate real-time numbers. So the challenges here, slow month end and manual workflows blocking visibility. Month end, Jack, this is something that you guys deal with pretty frequently.
It is, and it's. I mean, obviously, I think this blends the two really well. Reporting and month end kind of in the one, and the 95% saying real time reporting is important, yet 11% on the last slide saying they felt like they have good reporting in place is really like clearly this is an area of interest and focus for a lot of people, which is fantastic because I think there are answers out there. And clearly it's an important area that a lot of people want to improve on. So I won't touch on reporting so much, but from a month end perspective, what's really kind of got me interested in what we're doing at Mayday, and I remember talking to David, our CEO, when I took the role. He described kind of the mission that we're on, like the one that Zero was on when it came to day-to-day bookkeeping. Right now you can have your Zero file or probably your QuickBooks file as well reconciled every single day, maybe to the hour, and have accurate, you know, bank reconciliations done. That's part of the process, but we still have month end for deferred revenue recognition. We have our prepayments journals we have to do. We have a bunch of accruals we've got to do. We've got to do our intercompany reconciliations. We've got to post our intercompany recharges, whatever the case may be. There's a whole bunch of other broader accounting processes that only happen at the end of the month. So we're really focused at Mayday on all of those manual processes, bar we kind of draw the line at reporting and consolidation because we know there's good tools in market that do that. But why does that have to, why is a proficient finance team taking 10 days to do that? Why is that such a heavy hitting manual process? And so we're very interested in that. We're focused on all of those journals and workflows and accounting processes. So, definitely watch this space. We're already doing some really amazing work around intercompany recharges, intercompany reconciliations, cutting days out of the month-end process for certain groups. But there's a lot more to come. Deferred revenue is kind of the next thing on our list. We've got a product in beta at the moment on that, and then prepayments will follow soon after. So it's definitely an area of interest for us too. So as much as this is clearly saying this is important, and the last slide saying maybe for a lot of businesses it's not quite as efficient and not in the place that they'd like it to be. Just know that there's teams of people working hard to make this happen. And we've got an AI slide coming up later on that I can kind of add a little bit more perspective on that too, because I think that technology it's interesting how that will apply to this problem.
Yeah, 100%. I'm looking forward to that point because AI is the topic on everybody's tongues at the moment, and I think for finance teams, it's going to be a bit of a tricky thing on how much we implement on AI and how much of that becomes our day to day. Harry, any thoughts on this point here? Because I know that Joiin does some real-time reporting, some month-to-date reporting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Kind of like one of the things that we're seeing, and this is actually something that's a real hot topic inside Join. I'm letting you behind the curtain here at the moment, is a change in expectations from users. It's previously kind of month-end reporting was fine, or people coming to us in quarterly reporting because actually month-end was a little bit too much to do for their finance function. Now there's an expectation that why aren't my numbers given to me straight away the second I come in the morning on a nice pretty dashboard? Um, and that's the expectation that we get people coming to us and when we speak to customers. But then also if we dig into the numbers within the survey, only 27% of people surveyed say they're kind of fully leveraging automation, which shows that there's a bit of a disconnect there. That if you're expecting real-time data, you need automation.
Mm.
So then the rest of that kind of group, let's look into automation where we can. Let's get those numbers in real time on a dashboard for you, so that you can present it to the CEO the second they ask for it as well, and really kind of excel, which is
Yeah.
something we're really keen on.
I think it's super important for finance teams to have that visibility, have that transparency, know the numbers as and when they need to. It's something that I see quite often as well, speaking to prospects. They spend a lot of time creating budgets, 12-month budgets, cash flow forecasts, which the finance team hold. But then when they're in the process of approving bills, that might be a team on the ground or a different department head, and they don't have visibility into those budgets. They don't know real time, where are we at, right? Do we have enough in the budget to approve this or not? And so, you get to the end of the month and lo and behold, you're over budget, right? How did that happen? No real-time visibility. So I think it's super important, and it kind of flows on to many different topics around the finance function. All right, let's move on. Number 4, strengthening internal financial controls. So only 18% are confident in their controls, gaps in approval tracking, and segregation of duties. So I might jump in here. This is
Yeah, this is
a
yours. Go
really
for it.
topical one here for ApprovalMax, hence the name. So actually, I tell you a story. It's quite interesting. Speaking to a prospect, and he was telling me about how they've recently had a client who needed someone in the finance function, and they brought in their auntie. So I think their mum's sister, who used to work in finance. Family business, right? Keep it within the family, a lot of trust in that function, but no controls when it comes to rigor in terms of knowing where the bills are going, the suppliers that have been created. And what ended up happening is the auntie had a gambling addiction and was creating false suppliers to a bank account that she controlled and was paying invoices to those suppliers, taking the money out to feed that gambling addiction. So, sometimes these things happen. There are bad actors out there, but not even bad actors, right? It could be human error, it could be mistakes. If you don't have guardrails in place to ensure that, things don't go wrong, then there is that potential. And things like this do happen. I mean, you would have heard stories that I think a couple of years ago, even Facebook got defrauded through invoice fraud. Someone created fake invoices and stole around $100 million. So even these big companies aren't immune to it. So I like to think of it as putting in those bumpers. If you think about going bowling, I definitely need those. Putting in those bumpers so that when you bowl and it goes a bit awry, then you can kind of stay within the lane and make sure that things are airtight.
It is definitely one of those areas, having started my career in, in audit, testing controls and those kinds of things, that when they're not there, it's a little bit of hope and pray kind of
Mm,
scenario, in that, 18% being confident in their controls means that, 82% are aware that the controls probably aren't up to the level that they need to be. And it's just a matter of balancing priorities and trying to figure out, which of these risks are
mm,
acceptable risks to take and which aren't. Because you can't, on day one of running a business, have all the, the controls of a mega corporation, and you don't need them.
yep.
But, figuring out that balance and implementing those controls as and when, I think is important, because it's not a problem until it is a
Is.
problem. So you kind of, yeah, you're having to do something when you don't even have an issue yet,
Mm,
which kind of feels, I think, sometimes difficult. But then you see you read a story, or you have someone very close to you experience something like that in a business not too far from yours, and all of a sudden it becomes very real. And I think it's those moments, those stories, that kind of trigger the action.
100%. It's actually super tricky if you're not using a tool for it as well, because the more controls you try to put in place, the more complex and convoluted the process. And if that is
Mm,
manual, then you're just adding more operational inefficiency. So if you're doing it in a manual way, then there's kind of a balance, right? Do we become less efficient with more controls, or do
true.
we have more
Yeah.
controls and become less efficient? It's a bit of a catch-22.
And that is probably a good point to make. There are some scenarios where, like, we come up across this every now and again. We have an intercompany reconciliation tool. A lot of businesses do their intercompany reconciliations manually. They pull in the transactions onto a spreadsheet, manually match it up. To some degree, things like that can be done manually to certain volumes. Eventually, the volume becomes too crazy, and it's better to have a system automate it for you.
Yep.
But I think that the risk associated with a manual process in a spreadsheet, or, to Harry's point, a line getting deleted out of a spreadsheet, or, the accidents can happen, whether it's an accident or something deliberate, that sometimes it's not actually, yeah, it's not even an efficiency discussion. It's actually sometimes it's the control that tips someone over the edge and says, we don't have a lot of volume going through here, but it's just too important that this stuff is done right. Yeah. So anyway.
For finance teams, often that's your responsibility, right? It's on you if something goes wrong. So something to always think about.
Yeah.
Great. Let's move on to the next topic. Using AI where it makes sense. So only 10% use AI today, 63% interested. I would have thought that would be higher. Most wanted use cases: fraud detection, predictive cash flow, invoice categorization. Jackie had some thoughts about AI.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, I didn't think about the 63% number too much when I saw the slide initially. But yeah, you're right. It is interesting that it's not high. It does kind of feel like it's on the tip of everyone's tongue, but, sometimes you can get caught in a bit of a bubble when you're only speaking
Mm,
to, people that are interested in these things. So that is interesting. 10% seems lowish, I guess, that, more people aren't using it, but maybe people aren't necessarily aware that they're using it. And I think that's, from my perspective, how I see AI's involvement mostly happening within the accounting and finance departments, is not necessarily the AI that maybe the 10% who are actively using it right now are thinking about it. I know from my perspective, when someone says they're using AI, I think about, am I using ChatGPT, or am I
mm.
using Gemini, and am I drafting emails and writing LinkedIn posts and things like that, coming up with poems for my niece or whatever the case may be. Sure, I'm using AI for those things, and that's great, but how does that help me with, accounting? It's not really, I can't really, it's not black and white. Like, I need something that I can really trust. Having a chat
The
to our CTO. Yeah, sorry, go for it,
no,
Harry.
no, no, you go on, Jack.
So I was having a chat to Griff, who's our CTO, about this recently. I kind of said, how do you look at it impacting us and impacting our customers? And his words were that a lot of month end is actually not accounting, not, hey, I need to be an expert to do this job. I need to be, a technically good accountant to do this work. It's a lot of manual identification and classification, or manually exporting things to spreadsheets and manually checking if this matched to that, or manually, making sure we haven't missed this transaction because last month we had to defer it over a certain amount. We need to make sure we pick up the same transaction this month. Like, there's a lot of things there that aren't actually, they're just work that AI could do for us. And so I think it'll end up being a lot of back end work that actually is
Mm.
leveraging the technology rather than us like interfacing with I'm sure there'll be elements of that. I want to go to an app and type in what was, what's the most recent POs that were approved or something like that, and I want to get a list out of it, sure. But also, what are the smarts that are they're going on in the background that I don't even have to worry about or even see, and it's making my life easier, safer, automating tasks that I used to have to spend days doing. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of
Yeah.
my
I'd
side.
be I'd be really interested to know. So it says only 10% are using AI today. Does that mean across in any way, or just in finance would be one thing? So I'd be really
Mm.
interested to know is there concerns? Is there a reason that 90% of people aren't using it? Obviously, there'll be a percentage of people that haven't even heard of AI and aren't in that kind of bubble yet. But what's the reasons holding people back from using it within their finance function? The, the expected one is trust and obviously the concerns about AI. But I'm really interested to know, maybe even if people left it in the comments actually, why AI has not been adopted by yourself if you haven't. Because like we can all see the kind of like the efficiency gains elsewhere. If we think about it from, I think Jack used the example of writing reports.
Mm.
If you can prompt correctly, the things you can do now in terms of report writing, I kind of slightly tongue in cheek said to someone the other day, and they got a good laugh out of it, so I'll say it now. Around like if back in the 15th century you were copying up your Bibles handwritten, and then you didn't start using the printing press, you'd be left behind. It'd be really interesting to see how long that takes within finance and what AI does to the landscape, and how long that takes. Because like we think it could be 3 years completely unrecognizable, but is it going to be slower moving if only 10% people are using AI today?
Well, it's a good call out. So if you have any thoughts on this, feel free to chuck it in the chat. What do you guys think about AI? It's a topic as we all mentioned that is on the tip of everyone's tongue. But I think for finance teams and just tools in the accounting business space in general, I think AI needs to be done right. And there's potential for it to be done kind of half-heartedly just to get an MVP out, in which case it gives you the wrong results or results that, it's not very helpful. And I think that is something that, that will really take away from the usefulness of AI. There's something called automation bias, where we have a tendency to believe AI and computers more than potentially what we should. I remember when ChatGPT was first coming out, and it was probably like 6 months ago. So actually, it was around for a while. If you asked it how many R's are in strawberry, it would say two, and it would say it very, very confidently, and it's clearly wrong. But it was one of the classic gags about AI, and sometimes it hallucinates, right? Sometimes it throws up wrong results. Sometimes I chuck an image in there and ask it to analyze it for me, and it gives me something completely absolute nonsense. So I think yeah, when it comes to things like finance functions and numbers and actual dollar figures, right, we better be sure that AI is giving us the right answers.
I actually had a I've only had this conversation once with a prospect, but it was interesting because it was kind of probably in that time frame, the world had started to adopt these large language model tools and start playing around with them, and then I'm sure the thought process then begins, oh, what else can I do with this? What else will it do? And someone started trying to paste in their intercompany loan transactions and say, can you tell me what's causing, because I've clearly these aren't balancing. So I'm just going to export my transactions and paste them into ChatGPT, and it'll be able to double check across both sides and then flag for me the the missing transactions or whatever, and they just couldn't get it to produce the number that was the actual discrepancy. So then the next thing the guy did was type in, "Is there a tool that that I can use to do this?" And then he ended up booking a demo with us off the back of that. But I just thought it was a I'm surprised it hasn't come up a little bit more, like people trying these things. I mean, it may well be happening, and I'm just not aware of it. But I thought it was that's my one claim to fame from an AI leading to us. But it is it is really interesting. I'm excited for what will happen here.
Yeah, I think we could talk about this until the cows come home, but let's move on. Let's go on to the last topic that we have here today, getting more from existing technology. So 73% don't feel they're getting the full value from their current stack. And look, I get it. It's always a struggle. There's so many different tools that people are adopting and getting the team on board, getting even yourself and understanding all the different functions and features. There's a learning curve, right? And it's tricky sometimes. Jack, let's go with you, Harry.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this? Does that number surprise you?
Um, no, like no, actually, of all the numbers, probably not. Like we all do it, don't we? We all have tools in our app stack, whether it be finance or like from my point of view, like our CS tools, that I know that it can do way more for me. I know that it can probably do some tasks that I think, oh, I hate doing that. I wish it was automated, or I wish this was done in a better way for me. So like I just think the way kind of I've tried to look at it this year, is kind of that kind of what do they call it? Like eat the frog idea where you think of think of something that you really don't want to do and you just dive in and do it and kind of look at one of your apps that you're underutilizing. You know you haven't spoken to the support team, you know you haven't had that onboarding you could have. Like dive in, see what it can do, read the testimonials of what the kind of the really interesting things that customers have done with it. Because there's always like so much to uncover, so much power within the apps, and the more you're a super user, the more you get out of it. Like a again, example wise, uh, I'm going to speak about accountancy practice. I think this is meant to be purely for in-house finance teams, but I'm going to cheat there. Um, an accountancy practice came to us recently. They specialize in kind of like property management specifically, and they were using Join just for some kind of like really narrow field around kind of creating dashboards. They spoke to our support team. They had like a bit of a, like, let's be polite and have let's say user error. Spoke to our support team, had a demo, and now they're utilizing it across like multiple clients when previously it was just for this one client, which is great success for them. Obviously, unreal for Join as well. So like dive in, let 2025 be the year that you utilize all your tools, which of course you're doing now if you're on this webinar, right?
Yep. I
I
think
think I absolutely agree, Harry. Like something that I've always kind of not that I want to live by this, or not that I want other people to live by it, but it seems to be a law of nature is that however far you get with a tool within the first 3 months is basically how far you'll get with that tool.
mm,
Don't get me wrong, that's on you, Harry, that's on me, that's on James to make sure that's not the case, and that, beyond 3 months we can help you to, learn about new features and get you engaged in master classes and all these kinds of things that are out there. But I think that that is a part of the reality, unfortunately. And I've even had it in a past life when I worked at a different software company. Someone, people would come and say, "Oh, great, I love that you do this, this, and this." I'd find out what tool they're on at the moment, and they don't necessarily realize their current software could do those things. So they've actually gone and said, "We need something better than this," and gone outside to see an app or saw an ad or saw a webinar on something that they need solved, completely unaware that their current tools could have done the job. So it's absolute. It's good that 73% don't feel it because like they're aware that to your point, Harry, like you're aware, like if push comes to shove, you probably know that there's more in the tools you've got. So I think that's a big part of it. It's kind of us all just kind of sitting on our hands a little bit saying, I know there's more it could do. I'm just busy. I'll get there kind of thing. But yeah, being part of webinars like this, the causes are exactly you flip them on their head. That's exactly how to handle it. Give give each tool an owner, make somebody in the team responsible for maximizing ApprovalMax, Mayday, and Joiin. Make sure that person attends the webinars and the trainings. Not everyone can be on top of everything, so I appreciate the challenge, but I think ownership and training is two really good ways of staying on top of it.
I
I think
like
a really good question to ask is how are other businesses or how are other finance teams using this tool? Like, what are the 3 or the 4 best things that they're doing at the moment with this tool? And that's a really easy way for, the salesperson or the support person or your dedicated point of contact to tell you how other similar teams are finding success. It might be something different from how you're currently doing things, and you'll learn something new.
Absolutely.
Harry, any thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, so I was going to chime in a second ago. Actually, I like that idea Jack's thing, almost like having the app champion, like spread the workload because it also it tends to be it's the same person is they're super app, they're super technology focused. They could take ownership over multiple tools, but actually you spread yourself thin, and then that's probably what causes that kind of burnout and underutilization. But actually, you've got one person, it's their kind of mini project. I love the idea of go to the training sessions, even if you don't want to, you might get a little gem that you can take back to your team. And then you look great, right? Don't you imagine like you come to the forefront of your team and you help them utilize this app that they've been using anyway, that all of them have been using, but none of them knew that it was kind of had all this power. Makes you look great and kind of helps the whole function, doesn't it? Maybe that's just an insight into my mind.
Some great ideas here, but in the interest of time, let's move on. So I think we'll open it up to some questions for about 5 minutes. I think I saw some questions come through in the chat. We've got one here. Is ApprovalMax a competitor to Lightyear? And if so, why is ApprovalMax better? Great question. Yes, I would say ApprovalMax is a competitor. We both work in the AP approval space. Look, 2 different apps, right? And every app has its own nuances, its own benefits. I don't know Lightyear to its fullest extent. I know it works very well for hospitality industries, and it's maybe a little bit more niched in that specific industry. With ApprovalMax, our strength really lies in our approvals, right? Hence the name. So the feedback from customers really around our approvals is that we're able to cater to pretty much any workflow that you're looking to build out in a really, really simple and intuitive way. The user interface is clean and modern. And to be honest, that's something that you expect from apps nowadays, right? You want to go to an app and it feels like a 2025 modern interface. So easy for the team to use and easy to get results. All right. If no questions, I think we have a final poll here, guys. So before you leave, if you could just do us a favor, answer this final poll. So are you interested in hearing a bit more from us? So ApprovalMax, Joiin, Mayday, or all 3?
Is there I mean, from your perspective, James, if someone is here wondering, is this a tool for us? What's kind of how would you know if you're on the other side of this to say, yeah, this is going to be ApprovalMax is something that, I should really be thinking about? Is it you've got 2 or 3 people involved in purchase orders and approvals, or what's the trigger point where that suddenly starts to become an app they need?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if you have multiple people that are involved in the approval process and you're doing things with a paper or email-based solution, then definitely reach out because it's something we can shave off multiple hours per month. But not only that, we talked about the fraud risk and all the risk benefits, compliance, audit trails, all of that stuff. How about your side, Jack, for Mayday?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth a conversation if you are of any size, if you're a multi-entity business on Xero or QuickBooks that has any volume of intercompany transacting. If you've got 20 entities, but each of those operates completely individually and there's never a related party transaction, then we might not be relevant. But if you've got some volume of intercompany transactions, it's probably a good play. It's worth a chat, and then from there, you can always assess based on your volumes and how big of a pain point it is, whether or not, it's something to implement now or keep on the roadmap for later. That's probably the primary trigger point. But we are beginning to build out our single entity functionality. Deferred revenue and prepayments isn't going to be solely for multi-entity businesses. So if those two things come to mind as annoying month-end processes, then potentially reach out as well, because that's kind of what's coming next for us.
Awesome. And Harry?
Cool. If you went into Xero last month and pressed download on a trial balance more than once, I would say, like, as simple as that. If you wanna kind
That's
of
good.
bring data into one place and report on it, rather than having to switch between Xero files, Join, or other apps in our space, right? There's some great ones as well. Might be the answer for you.
Fantastic. I love it. Nice and simple. All right, I think we can end the poll. And that is the end of the session today. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate your time and attention. Hopefully, you've learned something new that you can apply to your own team or your own practice. If you're keen to reach out, please do so. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
No worries. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.